Okay, I've cleaned off my paddle. All the dough is in here. If I, for this small quantity, I can pipe it fairly quickly, so there's no need to cover the dough. If I had a larger quantity and it was gonna take me, and if I were slower at piping and it was gonna take longer and I was worried that the dough was gonna get cool and dry out, I would take a piece of plastic and cover the dough so that it doesn't dry out. But like I said, I'm gonna move fast. Okay, so I have my pastry bag again with the plain tip, or as I'm using the coupler. So to load the pastry bag, open it up and make a collar. Let me move this out of the way. So a collar is when you fold over the top or opening of the bag a couple of inches. Okay, I am right-handed, so I am going to hold the pastry bag in my left hand, and the collar, I have my hand open, so my thumb and the other fingers are supporting the bag. The collar is folded on top of it, and my bag is open, ready to be filled. I use my rubber spatula, take some dough, and put it into the bag. And I use my thumb on my left hand as support to sort of like the side of a bowl to scrape the dough off the spatula. Now with this dough, you don't want to overfill it, your pastry bag. It will be too hard to pipe on your wrist. So I have this much in. So now that it's filled with the dough, let me move my bowl out of the way. Unfold your pastry bag. Unfold the collar. Now I'm going to squeeze tight. I've now transferred the bag to my right hand because I'm right-handed. Squeeze it tight and support it with my hand. I'm holding it over the bowl because the dough is soft and it's oozing out a little bit. That way I don't lose the dough, and I'll be able to fill that in the bag again and repipe. Okay, so my right hand is gonna do all the work. I'm gonna constantly keep a tight pressure at the top. I also have it closed off so no dough can ooze out the other end of the pastry bag and make a mess. The pressure is going to be pushing the dough out the tip. My left hand is just going to be used for guidance if I need it, or support at the end of the tip. The right hand is going to do all the work. Okay. So I have my sheet pan with a piece of parchment paper. I lift up the parchment paper. I put a little dot of, get this so you can see it, dot of dough on the sheet pan, and that glues down your parchment paper so that it won't wiggle and wrinkle as you're piping. Okay, so first I'm gonna, with this plain tip, I'm gonna show you the eclairs and the profiteroles. We'll do some eclairs first. So the motion is pull and then stop the pressure and go backwards. Okay, they're about 3 inches long. So constant pressure, and then stop with the pressure and pull your wrist back. This is what I would call mini eclairs. Okay, they're gonna be about 3 inches long. Leave space in between them because they expand quite a bit in the oven. Okay, so I'll do a few more of the eclairs, and then I'm gonna show you the profiteroles with this tip before I switch tips. Okay, so I can use my left hand for guidance or support. I'm continuing, I wanna show you how I do this in the bowl. I'm continuing to keep the pressure and keep this tight. Okay, so that the dough has pressure. If it doesn't have pressure, you're not going to be able to push it out in a constant stream. Okay, so that's good on the eclairs. Now let me show you the profiteroles are a circular motion, and the pressure gets applied to let the dough come out in a circle, and then a quick twist of the wrist to stop the piping. So circle and then twist. Okay? And again, leave space in between. And the size that I'm showing you is going to be what I would call a mini profiterole, similar to the mini eclairs. Okay, so my pastry bag's empty. I'm going to reload it with a little bit more and finish that tray with profiteroles. Just a little bit to finish the tray, and then I'm going to switch and show you the swans. Okay. The only way to get good at piping is to do it over and over and over again and practice. You're trying to make sure your shapes are uniform in size so that they'll all bake uniformly. And I'll get one more on there, and that's that. Okay, so now the last step is to brush the tops with melted butter. Get this where you can see it. I have melted butter and a pastry brush, and go very, very gentle with the butter. You only want it on the top of your choux. Try not to have it drip down the sides of the pan. Okay, now once you have the butter on, it protects the dough from drying out. And so if you can't get it in the oven right away, it's fine to wait because it has this bit of melted butter on the top. So I'm gonna let it rest while I show you the rest of the piping. Do the pastry brush gently so you don't mess up your piping. You don't want to pull it, just gently dab the butter on top. I'm gonna show you the swans now. So what I did is, after I had emptied all the dough out of the pastry bag from the profiteroles and the eclairs, I very carefully pulled the coupler out of the bag. That part's a little bit messy. But if I can, I like to reuse the pastry bag. If that's too difficult and you have to use another pastry bag, you can do that as well. However, I got the coupler out, then I have the star tip for the swans. Carefully got the tip in, even though the bag was a little messy, and then reloaded it with more dough. Okay, so again, I'm going to glue down my parchment paper with just a dab of the dough. Get it nice and flat. Now, for the swans, this is the shape. Squeeze it. The big part of the shape is sort of the breast of the swan, so that's bigger. And then down here in the point is the tail. Okay, so you squeeze, get a nice body, and then pull it for the tail of the swan. Again, leave some space between your shapes so that they can expand as they bake. And that's how you do the swan. And now I'm lastly, I'll show you how to do the necks. Keep going until your pastry bag's empty, and then you can refill it. Okay, again, I changed out my pastry tip, got the new one in for the swan necks and refilled with the dough. For the swan necks, you don't need a lot of dough. And remember, if you are making the swans, you only need enough necks for as many bodies as you made. Okay, so not a lot of dough will you need at the end for the necks. Okay, so I'm gonna glue down my paper. Now, this is the swan necks. It's like a question mark. And you do the neck, and then I'll show you how to do the head. Okay, so move this so you guys can see it. There. Okay. Just like that. Now for the head, or the beak, I should say, I just pull it down and make a little pointed beak off the head. And that's the shape for the swan neck. I like to pipe these separately from the other shapes because they're so small. They will bake very quickly. I'll do a few more. Okay, so question mark, and then add the beak. These bake in a few minutes. You just want them to get brown very quickly. And that's all. Again, I changed out my pastry tip, got the new one in for the swan necks and refilled with the dough. For the swan necks, you don't need a lot of dough. And remember, if you are making the swans, you only need enough necks for as many bodies as you made. Okay, so not a lot of dough will you need at the end for the necks. Okay, so I'm gonna glue down my paper. Now, this is the swan necks. It's like a question mark. And you do the neck, and then I'll show you how to do the head. Okay, so move this so you guys can see it. There. Okay. Just like that. Now for the head, or the beak, I should say, I just pull it down and make a little pointed beak off the head. And that's the shape for the swan neck. I like to pipe these separately from the other shapes because they're so small. They will bake very quickly. I'll do a few more. Okay, so question mark, and then add the beak. These bake in a few minutes. You just want them to get brown very quickly. And that's all.